Great. Let's get going. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the September edition of From the Ground Up. I'm Matt Jezik with Motif. I'm head of product here, and I'm here with my colleague Lilli Smith.
Hi, everyone.
And we're here for yet another monthly edition of this series to talk about what we've been doing with the software, but also about what else has been happening in the industry, any other kind of relevant topics. But one thing we do want to talk about today is just how we are thinking about high fidelity collaboration and what that means in terms of some of the functionality that we're talking about. Just a little bit more about Motif as a company and what we've been doing. So we're a relatively young startup. If you haven't seen some of the things we're doing already, definitely encourage you to go to motif.io is our website, or just follow us on LinkedIn or YouTube or any other channel there. And the thing that we're working on, we're building whole new design and collaboration tools for the architects and engineers in the AEC industry. So you'll see a lot of web-based tools, a lot of like browser and sort of new ways to think about how to collaborate in design. That's really what we've been working on. We have a product out now that is focused on design review and collaboration, bringing teams together functionally, like taking information from Revit and Rhino, getting it out to a larger design team for them to explore concepts, look at things in 2 dimensions and whiteboarding space, or directly in 3D and markup and sketch on them, and ultimately give them an easier way to communicate and collaborate. That's what we've been focusing on. And then, of course, we're building a platform that will turn into a larger design application too. That's a little bit of background about what we've been doing. And then more specifically, this month we have some topics that we think are interesting, talking about not just how people collaborate today, but what do we mean by high fidelity collaboration? We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then some really fun new features that help us explore and in the design a little bit more deeply. This thing called a scene browser, which lets you aggregate information together and control a little bit more. And then other fun things like sectioning, what we've been working on as well. So with that, let's see. So Lilli, anything else you wanted to add before we get into more here?
I think you covered it.
Okay, so before we get into some of the details, I wanted to show a few things that I think are really cool that we've been working on that really is a summation of the whole summer of work that we've been doing. So let me just share my screen really quickly here. 1 second. And just on 2 screens, it's a little difficult. Okay, there we go. Just a quick spin through some of the things and just to add a little bit more meat around what we're talking around high fidelity collaboration. So the things that we're doing, if you haven't been familiar with it already, is we're building an interface that is easy to get into, right? It's what we call an infinite canvas. It's a browser-based application. Anybody that can draw in PowerPoint or in Miro or anything else like that can use our tool. And you can easily work in 2 dimensions, building mood boards or looking at different options, or also in 3 dimensions. And that's a cool thing. And that 3 dimensional collaboration is different than what you might be expecting. Like it's not just taking a screenshot of a particular view, you actually have the live 3D information and you can comment, mark up on it directly, and it's actually linked back to the source. That's one of the things that we're talking about in terms of high fidelity collaboration. It's not 1 or 2 steps removed. Oh, I didn't get that post-it note from your markup meeting from like last week. Nobody told me what to do. You see that information live and direct. And you also have the updated information, like you're not looking at something that's 2 steps removed from the source. So that's the core thing. And of course, these things are architectural, like they understand how big a building is and you can measure it and do other things like that. So just a quick spin through what we've been talking about here. This is a really fast video, but as an example, so this is Motif. You can create a project and a board, and then from that, you can start sharing with other people pretty easily. Just add new people to your team and then start collaborating on that. And then start to bring in information, in this case, like 2D concepts. You can explore them from other sources or actually use our AI rendering tools to create new concepts inside of here. So basically anything you can do in these 2D tools, you can do here to explore options, explore different ideas, and then start to mark them up and collaborate. And then where it gets really cool is when you start working in 3 dimensions. So the coordination thing requires, we're not a design application yet. This is heavily, you can work where you want to. So this is heavily based on a connection with Revit or Rhino. So in this case, I can stream or publish information from my 3D application of choice. Here we see Rhino publishing like a sort of an awning kind of feature, this shading device. And the overall building, of course, came from Revit. So you're in this aggregation environment. You can bring in information like the site context too, all in one spot, easy to do. You don't have to be a 3D genius to do this stuff. And then what I like on top of that is you can start to do really interesting work digging into the building some more. So one of the things that we think is really cool about this is you can collaborate naturally in this space and then change the model. Like in this case, if we're working on this breeze shading structure, I want to work on the bracket. So I can update that bracket, change that geometry in Revit, and then it gets published immediately to Motif and updated from there. Or if I made a bigger change, like moving furniture around or walls or anything else, like those things will all stay updated inside of the system. And then you see comments, so like the comment that you add in Motif will show up back in Rhino or back in Revit, so you don't have to watch a different channel or make sure that somebody kept the right meeting notes meeting from there. And then one last thing that I think is actually super cool is inside of here now, one of the things we'll be showing today is how you can section your building, how you can isolate down using the scene browser or sectioning to start to have a more focused conversation around a particular part of the building, right? So in this particular design review, we're looking at ways to lay out like a retail space for a university bookstore. So you can play what if, you can sketch directly on the model in 3D and then start to add play what if. What if we put this piece of furniture here or this flow change this way? You can explore that pretty easily in this environment without having to be in your super complicated, like heavy design application. You can do things very quickly here. And then once you like something, then you can change it back in the other system. So those are some examples of what we're talking about with high fidelity collaboration. So it ups the game. You can have a conversation with your client, with your owner, with your team, with your boss, using this kind of tool as opposed to some derivative like PDF file or some other presentation that is out of date. And then, of course, you get all the what ifs. What if we move this over? What if we change this directly in this tool? So with that, so this is what some of the things we've been working on this summer, building up an application that's a little bit more feature rich. And want to turn it over to Lilli to talk about some of the things we just added and are just releasing this month.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt. I'm going to go through just live in the software and share with you some of the new things that we have. So let me figure out what screen to share here. All right. Can you see my subdivision model here?
Yeah.
Looks good. Okay. One of the things that we've been doing is with respect to this idea of this high fidelity collaboration is continuing to bring over more information from these rich models that we're working with. So this is a model that I've brought over from Revit, and we're bringing over a lot of information about this model. So you can see if I just select this model here in our properties panel, we already are starting to see the project information about the type, the idea of the project, the address. If it was filled out in the Revit file, it would come over there. And we can also start to dig into more information that is seen inside this model. So with our scene browser that we started talking about a little bit last time, but we're continuing to work on it and making it more full-featured. And you can see here there are, on this board, I have this 3D model. I have a couple of frames. And when I'm selecting them here in the scene browser, you can see that they're also being selected here in the canvas. I can, for my frame, I can open this frame up and I can see what's inside it. So this freehand sketch and this text and this image are all children of this frame. And I can roll that up or roll it out and work with these elements individually. I can also open up this big Revit model that I have and start to get the categories that are inside of this model. And then we can do things like, hey, I want to turn off all of the planting in this model. So we have visibility controls. where we can turn things on and off to start to understand them. We have it right now that it's what is what you get. Sometimes we call that WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, coming from the view in Revit. So if I had all of these trees off in the Revit Motif 3D view that I was bringing over, the trees would be off on the Motif side too. But we're also trying to introduce new ways or more ways that you can control and understand what you're looking at here. So now we're starting to introduce ways that you can control things on the Motif side and turn them on and off. So similar, this model is all RBT links. So I can start to turn all of the links off, or I can open these up and start to turn off. These are specific, you can see downslope A, downslope A1. These are specific types of houses that I have in these subdivisions. So I can turn off all of these types of houses at once to start to understand what's in this model and use it to understand more about this model, really. I can also do things like dig into some of the sub-properties of these model elements. So if I want to dig into one of these driveways, I can actually select this and see which one it is here. If I turn this on and off, and I can also see in this specific driveway that I've selected here what the computed amount of concrete is. So understanding that it's 227 square feet, it has a volume of 113.2 cubic feet of concrete can be super useful. We could look at this in one more of our test models here. This is a condo building here. And we've been working on ways to improve visibility and navigation of these models. A couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, maybe, we introduced fly mode, which is this command here, which will enable the WASD keys to navigate. And we're continuing this approach to being able to navigate your building better with our sectioning tools, which can allow you to make a section clip of this building that you can split this to the other side. So you can start to understand and see into the units of this building better, see what connects to what's over what. So understanding quickly in this condo building that, oh, I have bedrooms over kitchens, over bedrooms, over kitchens, might be some noise issues there, but good to be able to understand. The scene browser also gives us another way that we can dig into visibility here. So in this building, if I open up the condo here, I can turn off, let's see, if I turn off ceilings and the roof fascia there, that will give me another way to look into this building and understand how these different units are connecting. I could do this with a section cut, or I could do this also by turning off these categories of objects there. Let's see, are there any questions yet that we have from people? Feel free. There's a question and answer part of Zoom that we are using to ask any questions. We'd be happy to take any questions.
I'll throw one in. So what happens if I start sketching, like now that I've turned off the roof, for example, if we wanted to go in like one of those bedrooms and start sketching on top of it, like how do you do that?
Yeah, definitely. So we can go into this bedroom here, and sketching in on top of models in Motif is really great because we have this really simple affordance that just lets you pick whether you want to sketch on the bed or the wall or on this door. And once you select a plane, you can just start sketching here, and you can do things with text, and you can leave messages here that says, let's look at this bed in king size. So you can start to do those kinds of markups move my arrow over a little bit. You can edit these markups and use them really easily to make these markups. And then if I wanted to point someone back to this markup, I have a cool feature that if we take a view snapshot of this view, I can just hit V there and it will save my view in this gallery and we can use it later. Another feature that we have, our new feature this month, is being able to drag and drop or drag and size images on placements. So when I just made that view, it is a way to save the camera and go back to what I was looking at there, but it's also appears in our asset library. So if I turn on views here, and I think this is called, actually, let me rename it something so that we can really see it. I'm going to rename this bedroom markups. So now I can see it in my asset library as bedroom markups. And I'm going to go and I'm going to place this bedroom markup on a frame. So it'll show up again in my asset library. The asset browser is things that they're assets that you can place in your project and use in your project on all of the boards that are in your project. So now if I go to place this, I get a preview of what it's going to be. But if I want to make this a certain size, I can also start to drag it. And I think it's conflicting with my frame a little bit, which we've got to fix, but it'll let me size it on placement. If I size it down here too, you can see the preview that's supposed to be getting over that frame too. But
So it really should work the same way as like how images work or how like when you draw a rectangle, like that one you can click one click and make a square, or you can click two clicks and make a rectangle or yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we're trying to make these tools really familiar and work the same way. And if I go and instead of the view assets, if I go to my image assets, I have I published some sheets to this project. So I have a lot of sheet assets in here, but I can also look and I already have this one published here, but I can place these are some renderings that I did. And oh, by the way, another new thing that we have for renderings is that we can see how it was created over here in properties. Perhaps another example of hi-fi collaboration is that we're really tracking properties. If I had made a prompt when I made this rendering, it would show what the prompt is. So really we're trying to store and be able to use and show all of the properties for all of these assets that live in this motif world.
So one of the questions, Lily, is if
Yeah.
now that you like that view that you just made, like how can you share it with somebody else? If you said, "Hey, I want to bring in somebody else from our team to help understand like this comment," like how would you share that?
That is a great question and a great segue into another new feature that I wanted to talk about, which is the ability to share frame links. So if I go to this frame and I right click on it, I get this new entry here called copy link. And what this is a deep link, which has been copied to my clipboard. And I'm just going to show this in a new tab, but I could also send this to you, Matt, and you could open this because I think you have to be a member of my project right now to be able to see it. We don't have anyone with a link sharing yet, but we're working on that. But you can see this frame. Hopefully it's going to come up in a second. Zoom to the right spot where you can see this too. Voila. So it's come in and you can get focused right to where I want you to look and be able to get this markup just by sending you a link.
So there are some questions that are starting to roll in. So let's see. One of them actually tying back to the markups. So ultimately, how do you not lose track of markups that are in the model in various locations? Like initially, like I have got all those views and sharings and mentions. You'll have all this stuff that's building up in boards. Like how do you find the thing? And maybe that's a good example of, yeah, like the pretty much the scene
Yeah.
browser.
Oh, that's a really good question. Probably something we need to do a little bit more work on. The scene browser is one way that we can start to, and admittedly, if you have a lot of markups in here, this is going to start to be a really long list.
But you did that fast. What did you just do to navigate from the
Okay.
scene browser to the graphics there?
Sure. So to navigate to this, I can highlight it in the scene browser and I can say zoom to fit and it will come to where that is. Now, I really have to be another way that you can keep track of this is to create these views, which I was talking about before, which will bring you to areas of the model that you want people to look at. And then frankly, keeping track of them on frames or in views that you've placed, things that you want people to look at can be another way. And we're doing more work on our scene browser. In our staging version right now, we have a way to, so we've introduced these filters where you can filter it. We also in our staging version are working on a search so that you can search the scene browser, and then hopefully we'll work on soon a way that you can say you can have that search be a little bit more robust, maybe natural language search, and say, hey, show me all the markups that Lilli and Matt made on Monday at 12:30 Eastern.
That's a really good point
Yeah.
because like we have all that information. Like there's all the history of all the things that are in your model.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see that I made this sketch rectangle 7 minutes ago. So we have all of this rich information, and really it's exciting to think about what we can do to really organize that, being able to navigate it and be able to point people to the things that they need, because it can be an overwhelming amount of information, and how do you use it all in a way that is useful and at hand for what you want to get at.
That's a good segue into the next question. So we have actually some new people that have not been on these webcasts before, and they're starting to understand a little bit more about what we've been building up with Motif. But maybe Lilli, you can help us understand the overall workflow. So for this subdivision project,
Uh-huh.
some of the questions here are like, okay, I know how to do all this stuff in like Revit with like model linking and like pulling all this stuff together. Why should I use Motif for something like this when I could use Revit just to show it there? Like, what are the benefits of Motif for that? And then how is this sort of adjunct to Revit? Like, where does it fit? What's the workflow that you would use to take a project that you have active in Revit and simply put it in Motif at all? Why would you do that?
There are many reasons, and feel free to add to this, but one reason is just the ease that you can share this with people. You can share a link, and it's a lot faster to open up than opening a whole Revit model. You can do it on any computer. If you are using a Mac, you can, any browser will load a Motif model. We have a plugin for Revit and for Rhino, which Matt, you showed in the videos at the beginning. But we have a link right here where we can install a plugin for Revit. And that right now is how you can stream information from Revit via a special view in Revit to Motif. There were a lot of parts to that question.
But so, for example, like if you wanted to have a working session like with your client or with a consultant or with someone else, you don't have to use like a more complicated tool like Navisworks for you could aggregate things together here, or you don't have to publish things out to a PDF file and go through some other larger document review process. You could be doing that collaboration live directly on top of your model and any other model, like your engineer's models, anybody else, just push them all into this, look at them all together, cut sections through them, turn things on and off, identify areas that need further design, and then use this as a living record of like, how is the design progressing? So you don't have to be creating the geometry in here, but you can use this as a way to enhance the collaboration. And that's really the definition of that hi-fi collaboration that we've been talking about.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And I would say that it's not just models too. We also have sheet sets that we can bring in. So we have from Revit, you can publish two kinds of things. You can publish the 3D model, but you can also publish full sets of drawings. We're having a couple problems with our resolution of these drawings right now, but we're working on making performance. When you're looking at a whole sheet set at once, it's a lot of data. So bringing that in can also be a way that you can communicate back with Revit. And we also have some functionality with comments that will go back and forth between Revit. So nothing that you change about the model. If I turned off the roof in my model here, that is not going to affect what I'm doing in Revit. But if I make a comment on any of these sheets or anything in the model, that will go back to Revit, to people who have the plugin installed, so
Wait,
that
wait,
they can
wait, wait,
have the
wait.
community back.
Are you telling me? So, it's the same thing. If I'm using some of these other tools now, I can have little sketches or markup, and then I have to remember to go back to that session and figure out who changed, who requested this change, or what's the real scope. So using these same, so you talked about comments and marking up in 3D, but if I add comments and markups like on a 2D sheet, I don't even have to use some of these other tools, is what you're saying. Like I can just do that directly in this environment. Like I'm not even have to worry about 3D at all. I might just want to look at all my sheets together as if we were pinning them up on a board somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
Can
this
I,
would be your
how,
massive pinup, and you can have these comments going back and forth. You can, of course, mark up over these sheets.
and I heard there's a way to lock down you, so you're only looking at like a 2D view of this stuff. Like how would I do that?
Yes, so spacebar is your friend in Motif, and that is a great way to come into a 2D view. But we also have this view cube here, and there are, if you open this little side menu, similar to other view cubes you may have experienced, but there are some keyboard shortcuts where you can hit 5 and go to top plane. You can change to orthographic and you can lock it. And this will make this once 3D board into, and we can see it here, it's now no longer in perspective, it's an orthographic view, and will give you more of a kind of 2D board experience, if you will.
So if you had like a project manager, someone that's super familiar with Miro, for example, or some other 2D kind of infinite canvas, like they could come in and feel comfortable, like they can just pan and zoom in and out and mark up pretty easily.
Yeah, yes. And we actually have some affordances if you're in this top-down locked orthographic view. I think we make it so that right click on the mouse button will be pan to make it easier for you to pan. And we do
Cool.
things like not going all the way, not being able to zoom, change the zoom a little bit too, so that you don't zoom through your sheets.
Awesome. And that answered 4 out of the questions that are open right now. So we can comment on sheets and see the results back in Revit. Like so that comment that you put on that sheet, like that like table of contents view, that would show up back in the Revit view. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have Revit open right now, but that would probably be, that'll be, it could be a demo for next time. How about that?
Yeah, and I've never seen something like that before. Like the idea that if you're using Revit or Rhino, like that's your place you're spending 10 hours a day in, like why should you have to switch out of that to go somewhere else? Like it should notify you like right there. So that's cool. Let's see. So other questions. So not, this is a good one. Not all information that's important to the project is graphical in nature. Like we have models and drawings and sketches. In fact, often critical information is some other type of data, like a table format, like from Excel, or some other kind of tabular data. Is there a way that you can bring that stuff in that also could be collaborative? That's a good question, but that's definitely something you can think about Motif as not being the single source of truth of everything in the world. Like we actually don't want all the data in the world inside of our application. We want to link out to where that data lives. So if you had data that was in a tabular form, like in Excel or something else, or in Google Sheets or whatever, you should be able to drag and drop that in, but that should maintain like a connector, like some kind of live link, like similar to the live link with Revit or Rhino to that data source. So you should be able to see it, maybe even modify it there. But if you change the source, it should update here. So that's the goal. We don't have that in place yet, but certainly we totally understand that so much of the information in the world isn't geometric or graphical in nature. There's other information, even just like bringing in PDF files. Like you can do that today. You can drag and drop PDF files in, but they're static assets. Like that's just like literally there like an image versus remembering where something came from. And those are all things that we'll be adding soon.
Yeah. These sheets are actually dynamic assets. So if you publish over this sheet set, it will update any sheets that have changed, which is a thing that a lot of people like. I know that it can be real pain to slipstream sheets and
There's
this,
a term I haven't heard in a long time. Like we used to
yeah,
have
this,
to, back in the old days, you used to have to like actually plot out drawings and you issue a set and then you'd issue a revision and then you'd have to slipstream in six new things that got changed into the larger set. Yeah.
so talking about data, if this wall schedule, I think it is, changes, or if this door schedule changes, this will come back in. This is only an image, so we need to do more work to really support the actual data that's coming in beyond what we have in the model coming in. But yeah, I mean, we have primitive ways right now to deal with non-model data coming in, if that makes sense.
But that is where the industry is right now. Like there are no real great solutions here. And actually, that's another one of the questions here. So it sounds like this type of tool could be really good for like project managers or people that aren't necessarily in the models every day, but they need to know what's happening and go talk to the client or go talk to the city or work on permits and work on that kind of thing. How can people understand like how this relates? If your day-to-day life is I dealing with 200 PDFs and marking them up and giving them back to my team or trying to go out and do coordination meetings like with the contractors, like how could they start to use this tool instead of a strict 2D workflow?
Yeah, I think, anybody that has access to a browser and people that are willing to publish these updates from Motif for them can have a really great connection back, a fast way to see into what's going on with the model, what's going on with the sheets, being able to do their own interrogation through our section cutting and the scene browser, being able to investigate model elements can really be a help for people who are trying to understand what the latest is in these projects. And we can also, you could have, because we can have more than one board here, you could have your sheet review board, you can have your model review board, you could have your model review from last week and your sheet review from last week and your sheet review from this week and your model review from this week, and point people specifically with links to what you want to look at or what is most relevant to me. We're trying to make this really open and a way that you can set it up how best it's working for your projects. And we're also super interested in working with people who are willing to invest with us and work with their managers and figure out the best ways to make that workflow work best with them.
And that's a really good point. And that's probably a good, maybe if we can talk about like how are we working? Like we're a small startup. Like we number one, are putting out these monthly and sometimes even faster than that releases. But more importantly, like we're working with architects, engineers like every day. And what I think is really cool is when somebody might have been meeting with us like in August and said, hey, I think it would be cool if you added this feature. And then we're releasing it in September. Like it can be that fast. Can you talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah, I would say that's one of my favorite parts of this company is that we have a lot of really great architects on staff. I worked as an architect in a previous life, but I've had most of my life in software, but I still love architecture and I love talking to people about architecture and architectural processes. And we have newer architects. We have people from Big, Bjark Ingels here. We have Jeff
Perkins and Rowan.
McGrew,
Yeah.
who has had his own company and they have a lot and just on staff, but we also work with design partners, people who work with us and give us feedback and are really helping to develop this tool and helping us provide value for them and trying to get them into more and more use of the tool.
And anybody that's using it right now. So certainly I like that whole like industry people inside the company. Obviously, we have software developers and architects and people with domain experience, but then there's a lot of overlap there. But more importantly, like we have people that are working with us like on a daily basis. Like a lot of our early adopter customers, or we call them design partners, are actively meeting with us and they're using the software on projects. And we're helping people like advance what they're trying to do with it. Because what we think somebody wants to do or what we thought somebody wanted to do a year ago might not be the same as what they actually really want to do, or when things actually get out in practice, like you need to do it slightly differently. So we have to iterate, we have to be very agile. Like we do a lot of agile software development and then what's called user-centered design. So a lot of heavy interest on what people are really trying to do, and then the picks and clicks come after that. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool thing that a lot of people talk about that, but doing it in practice on a day-to-day basis is like a real, fairly rigorous thing that you have to really apply. So
The devil is definitely in the details, and getting software out um, into what we release and what how people actually use it. We learned so much from that process.
So
So
with that, and we definitely encourage anybody that's on this call or listening to it later, just get in touch. Go to motif.io, reach out, say get in touch. Literally, there's a big button that says that. We'd love to work with you. We don't bite, like we like to talk to people. We love to hear about the types of projects you're working on, any challenges you have, both in the collaboration space and then also on like larger design topics. Reach out. Thanks a lot. Definitely. Yeah, Lily, anything else from your end?
nope, looking forward to hearing from some of you and to our webinar next month.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, great feedback here. Lots of great questions. Yeah, and it sounds, yeah, a lot of interest from like different project managers here, like that. Just definitely reach out and try it out if you haven't already. And then, yeah, it seems like we've answered all the other questions. But feel free to come back next month. We'll have some brand new features. And we definitely think that there are more kind of front end features that are in development, and then other capabilities around AI rendering, other AI applications, and then things that we can do on the interoperability side, like connections to different applications. So those are all things that we're actively working on and will be released soon. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care.